Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you've not subscribed to our channel, please take a moment to do that now. So here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, I am reading through the collection, These Stories of Ray Bradbury. There's 100 tales in this collection. We're up to 83 of 100, which is Yes, We'll Gather at the River from 1969. The way these video reviews typically work is that I do a short synopsis of what happens in the story and then wrap up with all of my sort of notes and thoughts and feelings on what the whole thing means and if it's a good story, how is it relevant. Going to be a little bit weak on the synopsis today because it's just that type of story where it's not very plot heavy. It's more of a mood thing, an exercise in feeling and just a general atmosphere, I guess. So for that, Charlie Moore owns a tobacco shop on an overly busy street in LA. A superhighway is about to open the next morning a few hundred yards away, which will effectively cut their town, this small community, off from the greater flow of traffic. He and the other shop owners seem reluctant to close. Usually close at 9 and they stay open a little bit later, and some of them sort of walk the streets, visiting each other, talking about the situation. We hear an assortment of different conversations. Some say the highway will kill their community. Others think it'll probably just slow it down and will die very, very slowly. Some think that, maybe we should have fought harder against this project. But eventually there's also a feeling of acceptance, progress must eventually happen. We move on to get sort of a metaphor about a highway being a river that changes its course. And finally, the next morning comes, the morning of the opening of the highway. Charlie's wife wakes up to find him gone, and he's just coming in, and she thinks it's unlike him to be out so early. She wonders what has he been up to. He reveals that he and one of his friends, Fred Ferguson, had gone out to the new highway and taken it upon themselves to move the wooden barriers and open the highway themselves earlier, sort of like opening a floodgate that's been holding back a river or removing a dam. And then I should add that he says, listen, and they notice it's a lot quieter because the highway's moved, and that's a positive. However, you can still hear in the distance, and even beyond that, you can hear the actual ocean. It's a beautiful little tale. Again, light on conventional plot, but it really does have a sort of feeling that permeates the whole thing, this sort of sadness of the death of a community, but also some of the people also mention a feeling of excitement, almost like one man describes it as sort of the night before or the night of graduation, and you sort of wonder what you're going to feel like the next morning once you've been released from school. Highways cutting off communities is a very real thing, and I like to watch some of these architectural and construction channels on YouTube, and there's one, the B1M, I like. And places like that have done videos about how highways cut off communities, and a lot of this happened like in the US in the 40s, 50s, 60s when these big highways were being built, and there's often a racial thing attached to it. We're being told that, these were deliberately cutting off black communities, and some of that probably did happen, but I think it's important to remember that plenty of other communities of many different types have been cut off and changed by highways. Here where I live in sort of small town in rural Pennsylvania, the main road used to go through the town, and now there's a highway, and the highway has exits. So, there's where every car used to go by every business. Now those cars need to choose to get off on one of the 2 or 3 exits from the highway. So, that's a real thing even here. And, we have like 5 people of color in our entire community. Not by choice, it's just the way things work in rural America sometimes. And so I think it's important to not discuss the issue completely on racial grounds because many different communities have been cut off. Going back even further, earlier roads before highway systems went through, people's farmlands and places like that, very, very rural, very white places. And in fact, I think I remember reading something recently about a fifth or sixth or seventh generation farm that's being jeopardized by a road project. At any rate, the counterbalance to this is, one other thing. Some of these communities actually have been cut off for decades. New wisdom is coming in, and some of these highways are actually being torn down, and communities are being reunited. And even in a place like New York City, you have the High Line, which was a train track, but like that's been turned into park, and that sort of unites communities as well. So it's not all doom and gloom. And on that note, I think there's something to be said for progress. Progress does hurt some people, and change is difficult for people who have everything they need or are used to their way of life. But at the same time, if the progress hurts a few, but improves the lives of a great many more, is it bad? These are very actually complicated questions that I think people have wrestled with for a long time, especially in the modern age. Now we see it, with things like eminent domain, and the way these things can be forced on you, and it's easy to call them evil acts of tyrannical government, but it's not necessarily the case. And of course, here in America, luckily, you still have the ability to fight it legally, so that's a good thing as well. All right, then. Yes, we'll gather at the river from 1969 tomorrow. Return, and we will have a look at Have I Got a Chocolate for You from 1967, which is story number 83 of 100 in this collection. We're almost there, guys. Tune in for the rest of the month every day, and we'll finish this project up very, very soon. So thank you, and I will see you again later.